Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahmavidvaram Pathaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Puranamunina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vritavarshini Bhagavati Ashtadashadhyayini Ambatvam Anusantadami Bhagavad Geeta Vatveshini Vasudeva Sudam Devam Kamsacharuramardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Okay, so we'll go same format as yesterday. We won't do a verse by verse. How many people have not heard chapter 2 before? First time you're hearing chapter 2? Okay. How many of you, obviously the answer is the rest of you have heard it. So, instead of doing a verse by verse, which is what you've probably heard many times, we're going to go through the important gist of chapter 2, which is what we did yesterday also with chapter 1. Focusing on the practical takeaways that we need for our development. Okay? So, going back to where we were yesterday, right? So, Guruji had said that what we need, what we do with life is we have to face life and we have to build life, right? And what do you need to do both? So if you're building a building, what are the two important things we said? Foundation and the materials, the quality of the materials. So when it comes to building life, what is the foundation? Right knowledge, which gives the whole vision of what life is about, what its purpose is. And what is the material? Gurudev said? Values. The values we need to live up to this vision, correct? So we all have this question, what's the purpose of life? Gita reveals what's the purpose. It gives you that full vision. And how do I achieve and live up to this vision? What is the raw material? Values, right? So it attains that goal that I seek, without which I can't attain it, right? And then we had gone exploring about Arjuna's mental state. We had asked some pertinent questions. We had asked, Arjuna knew he was going to fight the Kauravas. Long time they knew. So why suddenly the breakdown in the battlefield? What had he not considered? We had asked this question, right? All the time you know you're going to have to fight the Kauravas, you're going to have to fight the Kauravas with Bhishma and Drona going to be there. What is it that was missing? So we had said three things, right? One was assessing ground level reality. So someone was asking me, Miraji, what does assessing ground level reality mean? See, giving a simple example. When you have to confront somebody that you are not on very good terms with, or for example, you know you find them difficult to work with, right? If you don't go in having mentally prepared yourself with the game plan, knowing what you're going to confront, you'll go in there and you'll get overwhelmed by the situation or the person. Correct or not? Whereas when you go in mentally prepared, this person is like this, no delusion. What am I trying to achieve here when I'm coming into contact with the person? Keep that goal clear. What is my set of values? How am I planning to react so that I don't become overwhelmed? And I come out, I've achieved the goal, I drop the matter and I don't hold angst. If I go in unprepared, what happens? Shock to the system, misery, coming out complaining, lose sight of the purpose also, person has run me on a tailspin. Correct? So that preparedness, that analysis, that having considered the psychological impact of what you have to encounter at every moment, You can't afford to remain delusional about any situation. Our perspective must be clear. So that Arjuna had not done, whereas Yudhishthira had done it. That's why at the beginning of the battle, he could prostrate to Bhishma and Drona and say, okay, I'll meet you at the battlefield. Why? Because he had considered all options until he knows war was unavoidable. Then he said, okay, war. So he had analyzed and considered the psychological impact of what he was planning to do. The next thing we said was fear of failure. Everybody has. Even the most seasoned actor, when you put him on stage, some part of him will have stage fright, right? And the third thing we said was wrong perception, wrong thinking. Arjuna is standing there as a dharma veera, a warrior of righteousness. When he forgets, and which is fighting for the larger cause, when he forgets that and he assumes a smaller identity, aham Arjunaha, and this person is my pitamaha, and this is my acharya, confusion. Where is your identity at that time? Which identity takes precedence, right? So when that vision is lost, when that is not clear, then suddenly you don't know what to do. That's what's happened, correct? So we've seen Arjuna's confusion, then we saw how he wants to run and he gave a million excuses. And we said usually we're very smart. We don't want to address the actual problem and we say everything else, this is not that, but actually the root of the problem we are not willing to admit. What is the root of his problem? He doesn't want to fight, he wants to run. So he's giving all sort of Buddha-like excuses, better for me to beg and all that. Really? Is that your temperament? It's not, you are Kshatriya. Here something else is playing with you. So we have to understand our own motivations when we are interacting in the world, because otherwise we get confused and we take the wrong decisions justifying it that it's correct, when actually I have not been willing to confront what is pinching within, correct? So these things, some of the things we saw, just a recap. Now we'll go on to chapter 2. So we'll again at the doorway of war. Battle is about to start. What was a family feud is now grown to the proportions where it is a clash of ideologies, dharma versus adharma. And the bulk of the kingdoms at that time had picked a side. So there were factions. See, in our mind also this is happening. More often than not, there is that war between the conscience and what we just want to do because it's easier or it's going to give us immediate gratification, or in various ways it's just going to be less difficult for me. This happens in our mind all the time, the conflict, right? And somehow we always feel that the voice of conscience is weaker, the other voice is stronger. So Mahabharata happens in our mind on a daily basis. Now which side do you choose? More often than not, it's just easier to compromise on the conviction. But does it lead to my longer term good? It never does. Even at the relative transactional level, we say no pain, no gain, right? Whereas when I choose that which is right, although it may be hard, we have to know that the reward is guaranteed and the victory is ours. But the choice is in my hand. That is the beauty about human birth. Choice is in my hand. So choose wisely, because then you can speed up your destination towards evolution. So here we are standing, and this is what Kathopanishad so beautifully says, isn't it? Shreyascha preyascha. The choice between what is Shreyas, what is preyas, what is easier, what is more convenient, what is immediately gratifying versus what is right. What is going to do long-term good for me? Do I have the courage of conviction to choose correctly? And you know what's the problem in between this? We sometimes feel that we're going to get cheated when we choose the good one. Like, I'll be a doormat. I'll be taken advantage of. These are all things we commonly say, phrases we use, correct? Reasons for why we don't want to choose that which is good or right. Huh? So we feel in all this that Bhagavan is a silent spectator, as though he will not support dharma. So Krishna looks like that in this scene. If you see, he is not using his powers to help the Pandavas, right? He said very clearly, I will drive your chariot, but I won't use any of my capacities. So it feels almost like Krishna is actually not giving them a hand. And he says, if you consult me for advice, I'll give you advice. It looks like that. And yet you think about it, how significant is the fact that Krishna is the charioteer? That means that whole Ratha will be taken to its destination, provides you trust the chariot. So you might think that the charioteer role is, oh, not so helpful, it's better if Krishna magicked the situation. Bhagavan is the charioteer, which means what? I have to surrender. My mind has to be absorbed in the Lord. My mind has to be devoted to the Lord. Then he is my charioteer. See, Duryodhana and Arjuna, Bhagavan gave them the option, equal options, he said. What do you want? You want my Sena or do you want me? What did Arjuna choose? You. So we live with that spirit of surrender to Bhagavan. Know that, confirm, guarantee, because Bhagavan said, Navi Bhakta Pranashyati, and he is what? One who constantly comes to establish dharma. So if he is dharma swarupa, then how will he not support you when you choose dharma? So if I am a bhakta, this I must be clear, that Bhagavan is ever benevolent, Bhagavan is ever on the side of dharma. So dharma I must choose. That is the expression of my devotion to him. Otherwise, what's the point of calling myself a devotee of Bhagavan if I am not on the side of dharma? Dharma is his very expression, correct? So in this way, when Bhagavan is your charioteer, you have a mind that has surrendered to that Bhagavan, then you are going to be ushered to the right destination. However difficult it may seem, you will be ushered to the right destination. And question is very simple. Where Bhagavan is, there I will be. That should be my way of thinking. What Bhagavan will endorse, that only I will do. We teach Bal-Vihar children. What will Rama do in this situation? The children are very smart. Conscience is awake at all times, and they will be able to tell you very clearly what Rama would have done in this situation. You ask them what you planning to do, then they might not know. Or they might decide they want to do the opposite. But if you ask them, what will Rama do in this situation? Every child will know how to answer correctly what Rama will do in that situation. So aspiring to dharma, that is what my responsibility is. The rest Bhagavan will take care. Don't worry. So here we are. And what is happening? Arjuna is completely broken and facing Krishna. And what does Krishna say? When we are broken down, what do we usually want? Ayyo power. Come here, darling. And we want someone to pat us in the back, pat us on the head and make us feel good. What does Bhagavan Krishna do? Klaibyam asmagamah partha naitadvai upapadyate shutram hridaya daurbalyam tyaktortishta parantapa. So what is this pathetic state you have gotten into? Have courage, Arjuna. Stand up and face your challenge. Stand up and face life. Because giving up is not an option. This birth is the only birth in which you can evolve. Now you can either backtrack or you can move forward. Situations have come, and the Lord in His infinite wisdom has put you there. Now if you deal with it correctly, aligning to Bhagavan and Dharma, you will transcend it. You will transcend the attachment which victimizes you to the situation. Please remember, it's never the situation itself. So here, very beautifully, Bhagavan says, Klaipyam masmagamapata. One cold bucket of water he pours in the face. He said, enough. Stand up, Arjuna, it is unbecoming of you. And this is a lesson to us. Not for one moment should anything overwhelm me in life. Whatever comes, the Lord in His infinite wisdom has put it there. Face it I must. Running away, turning away is not an option. My vasana never finishes. I have not used the opportunity to grow. I have not faced that karma phala. With courage I must face whatever comes. So in this way, no point should we live with regrets. Not at any stage of life should I have given up on it. At every stage I have a duty, and every stage it is my responsibility to recognize it and to perform it successfully. Only then do I go up to that fulfillment of life. Otherwise, that's my life law. What kind of a statement is that? That's my life law. Do we want that statement to be the phrase of our life? No. With a smile, whatever comes. Urkai patruvom. We must have. But Urkai patruvom how? Bhagavan yam pakkam irukkaru. Bhagavan is on my side. Dharma I will embrace. With that courage I must face. And you know, this after Bhagavan says it also, Arjuna again, Guru Nahatvahi Mahanubhavan Shreyo Bhoktum Vaishmapi Haloke. He's going on and say, how will I kill my teacher? How will I kill that? They are supposed to be worshipped. Great. Again back to the old discussions in chapter 1, and Krishna is just silent. See, Arjuna is smart. He's tuned enough to Krishna to realize that Bhagavan is silent. That means there are holes in my argument. So as long as you're talking, Bhagavan is not going to talk. So what does Arjuna do? And this is one of the most important verses in chapter 2, and a very, very beautiful verse, also one of my favorite verses. Karpanya dosho hi pahatas svabhavaha pritchami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha yat shreyasya nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. Beautiful, he says. What does he say? He says, Karpanya dosha bhatas svabhavaha. First thing you have to recognize that you are in trouble. He says, my mind has become overwhelmed with pity. And what kind of pity? Misplaced pity. The kind that cripples me from performing right actions. Compassion is not a bad value. In fact, we say it's a virtue. But when pity is misplaced, what happens? Usually pity is misplaced because there's attachment in the picture. And then it breaks you. Simple example I give. A mother, if she's overly attached to the child, and she's not willing to discipline the child when the child does something wrong, and instead says, Ayyo power my baby. What happens to the baby and what happens to you? Have you done the child a favor? And the child's behavior is later going to come back and hurt you. Every mother knows this. So when you are caught in that web of attachment, and instead you let things slide, and you don't perform your duty in that place, what happens? Then later when the child is misbehaving to you, so at least at that time you realize it's okay. Sometimes people don't realize they also. Misbehaving, ayyo power. How is misbehavior ayyo power? But we do. Why? What is blinding the vision? Attachment. So here Arjuna realizes that. Karpanya doshaha bhata svabhavaha. Idena pudichittu irukku now. This misplaced pity is not letting me see things clearly. It's not letting me take the right decisions. That which is going to lead to total good. Right? And then he says what? Prichami tvam dharma sammudha chetaha. Now I am asking you, you tell me what to do. Why? Because dharma sammudha chetaha. I am now confused as to what to do. He came in very clear. He knew his duty as a Kshatriya. And he came in knowing very clearly that the cause was a battle of dharma. What happened in between? Aham Arjunaha took over. Vision lost. Now, confusion. I don't know what to do. Dharma sammudha. I don't know what my duty is in this place. What am I supposed to do in this situation? I don't know. And we constantly face this sometimes. I don't know what to do in this situation. Caught. Helpless we feel. Right? And you're a bundle of muddled mess of confusions right now, which is what Arjuna is. But at least he realizes it. And then he says, Yashreyasya nishchitam bruhi tanme. Now he's used the key word, Shreyaha. And Shreyaha translates to absolute good. Now you firmly tell me, Krishna, what is my absolute good? Now we have to analyze this absolute good term. We looked at it a little bit yesterday, and I said I will touch on it today. What does it mean when we say something is absolutely good? It means unconditionally we want it. You think about it, and the example I'm repeating yesterday's example. Everything can be relatively good or bad, but some things are absolutely good. And we must be clear between what is the difference. For example, sugar can be good for some, sugar can be bad for some. But what is good for all at all times? Good health. That's absolute good at the physical level. Mentally, some things can agitate you. For some people, the same things don't agitate them. But what is good for all at all times? Mental peace. Unconditionally, we all want it, right? And at the level of intellect, different things can interest people. Some people find the same thing boring. But what is the absolute good for everybody? Clarity of thought. Clarity over the subject matter at any point, right? And all these three things we want for what? Happiness. It makes me happy. So absolute good at all times is happiness at all times, unconditionally. Whatever we want unconditionally is because we want to be unconditionally happy, right? Now we have to know what is the means for this unconditional happiness. What is absolute good? So Arjuna is asking this question now. Yat shreyasya nishchitam bruhitame, and then he does the most beautiful thing. He says, Shishyaste aham shadimam tvam prapanam. I surrender to you, Krishna. You educate me right now. So here, when we didn't know Sanskrit, our Acharya used to laugh with us. Shishyaste aham shadimam tvam prapanam. Krishna, marry me. Everybody will laugh and say shadi. No. Here, shadimam tvam prapanam means now I am surrendering to you. You educate me, Krishna. Not a bad idea, but you'll be 16,001. But with Krishna, why not? That's all we want, isn't it? But the truth is here, he has said the most important thing. And Guruji, when we surrender, where we surrender, Guruji says, and this comes in the Upanishad also, where there is wisdom and where there is nobility. Wisdom alone not enough, nobility alone not enough. Wisdom you need because the person needs to have the right kind of knowledge to guide you. Nobility you need because the person should have purity of mind without selfish motives and should be a well-wisher for you. Surat. When this combination is there, only someone can guide. If someone is noble but they don't know how to help you, what's the point? Some people are very intelligent, but if they don't have the nobility of purpose and the selfishness in it, what happens? They could get you into trouble. So where there is wisdom and where there is nobility, that is my point of surrender. That is my job, to make sure that I go to that kind of a space. Not somewhere where I just want someone to tell me, yeah, whatever you're thinking is correct, so that you can feel justified in your way of thinking. A funny thing sometimes, have you seen? The person who you don't quite like is the one who's got the right measure of you. And when they tell you you don't like it, but they know what the problem is. You know, sometimes they say people who give you trouble also are God's blessings because they make you realize where you're going wrong. You know, that's also Guru Prasada. So here, what is my point of surrender? But why is this verse so important? Because it talks about the two problems that we face. There are only two problems in life. One is, what is my duty? At any point, what am I supposed to do? The next question is, in what lies my absolute good? You can go home and think about it. If these are the only two questions in our life, actually they are. In what lies my absolute good? What is my duty at any point in time? What am I supposed to do? This is the universal question. That's why the Gita is a universal scripture. It's not just a scripture for Sanatana Dharmis. Because anybody in any walk of life has only got these two questions. So it is the solution for everyone at all times. So it is relevant at any point in time, at any place. Right? And this is what the Gita gives us. And Arjuna has very beautifully encased it in those two questions. He says, Dharma Sammuda Chetaha, tell me what is my dharma, Krishna. And then he says, Nishreyasya Nishchitam Puritami. Tell me what is Nishreyasa for me, he has asked. Now, when we're confused about all this, what happens? Grief. Not knowing, confusion, grief, misery we are in. We don't know, we don't like being that way, right? So if grief is the effect, the cause is ignorance. The cause is ignorance. And this chapter addresses exactly that. it addresses the effect, which is the expression of that ignorance. So this is a grief treatment that Bhagavan gives in chapter 2, correct? How do you confront grief? By inquiring into the validity of the emotion itself. Is it a valid emotion? Grief. That's what chapter 2 does. And then he also reveals what is the knowledge you need, such of dharma and of absolute good, which will then remove the ignorance which will lead all the way to the confusions and the grief. So both of this Bhagavan attempts to hint at in chapter 2, and then he builds it throughout the Gita. So that's what's going to happen. So here, when we're talking about ignorance, ignorance lies at two levels. One is at the level of duty, which is at the relative plane, correct? The other one we said is deeper. What is absolute good? What is it that I unconditionally want, and how do I achieve it? These are the two questions that are happening. And the answer to both is one and the same. You know why? When are we confused about our duty? Anybody? When is there confusion about our duty? Sorry? Louder? Can't hear you. You have attachment? Okay, anything else? When do we get confused about our duty? When you are? You don't have the purpose. We're getting close. When we have fear, when we have? Absolute? Absolute? Okay, we don't know. That's the point here. Actually, that's very close here. When I don't know my identity, duties are linked to our identity. As a mother, if I identify with being a mother, then these are my set of duties. If I identify with being a student, these are my set of duties. With my identity is tied the duty, right? Now my identity is at the absolute level, I must know what it is. And then at the relative level also I must be clear what it is. And at the relative level, there are hierarchies. Because we all play multiple roles, right? But that identity which is responsible for the greater good takes precedence over the smaller identity. For example, if a person is a father and a judge and the son is a criminal, which identity should take precedence, that of the father or that of the judge? Judge. Why? Because greater good is accomplished when you are dealing with a criminal. Now if the person thinks like a father, what happens in the situation? Criminal gets away. Who pays the price for it? Society pays the price. Very simple. What is my identity at the absolute level? What is my relative identity? What is the hierarchy? Which one takes precedence? Now, when I know my absolute identity, then relative identity is very easy for me to choose and stand correctly. Because it gives me that impartial vision that will allow me to deal with whatever comes. So when I know what my identity is, will I have confusions about my duties anymore? No. When you join a company and you get your letter of appointment, what is the first thing that is stated on it? Your job designation. What is your identity? The next thing, your description. Tied to the identity is the duty. So when we say absolute good, it is in knowing my absolute identity, subsequently my relative identities, and all the duties that are attached, which makes things very clear. And Bhagavan is going to address both in chapter 2. Now, if we look at, and the most beautiful thing about the Gita is, you always look at how Bhagavan starts his argument. What is the first word Bhagavan says? Klaivyam mas magamav partha, and the most important phrase there is, Uttishta Bharata. Get up and face. First instruction Bhagavan has given. Why is it important to see where Bhagavan says? Because those are his instructions, right? So the first thing he said already, Arjuna, you cannot crumble like this, nothing should overwhelm you in life. Stand up, face your challenges. First instruction. Second instruction, Ashochan anvashochastvam prajnavadamscha bhashase gatasun agatasumscha nanushocchanti panditaha. He says, there is no cause for grief at any point in time. How does he finish the chapter? Mashucha. Don't grieve. So the next instruction Bhagavan clearly gives us is, at no point should we be overwhelmed by grief. Is grief a natural emotion? Yes. But when I allow it to overwhelm me, then it cripples me. That is the difference. So here, how do I overcome grief is what Bhagavan is going to talk about. You see, grief obstructs right thinking and right action, because you need right thinking which will lead to right action. When grief is there clouding the mind, it will not allow you to have the right kind of thinking and the right kind of action, right? And we saw grief comes from ignorance. When ignorance is there, there's subsequent wrong attachments that will then lead you to grief, correct? So here, Bhagavan is saying that clarity will go when grief is overwhelming the mind. So he says, you are in grief right now, Arjuna, let's address it. So Bhagavan goes on to, how does he start chapter 2? Natvevaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadipaha na chaiva na bhavishyamaha. At no point in time was anybody born or did anybody die. Neither was I born, neither were you born, Arjuna, neither were these kings were also never born. What a statement. What does it mean we're not born? I was born. We all feel that. So then the question is, what was born and what was not born? There is that identity I must be clear, right? So Bhagavan is already hinting at this. And so first he reveals what is your absolute identity. He tells you, no, O Arjuna, at the absolute level you are Atma, you are changeless, you are Satchidananda Brahma, existence, consciousness, bliss. Now this part I'm not going to go into too much detail because it will take the rest of the 15 minutes. But most of you are Vedanta students, so you go and find out what it means by Atma Satchidananda Brahma. The only hint I will give you is, you are the knower of all your thoughts. All your thoughts pass, but the knower remains the same. Now if you inquire into the nature of the knower, you will realize that even in the state of deep sleep, that individual who seems to know everything is not there. And yet when you wake up, you are able to claim the experience of sleep as your experience. I slept. Were you there? But yet you got up and you said, I slept well, I knew happiness in that sleep. So then there must have been a continuity of the identity apart from this expressing individual, because Meenal was not there in her deep sleep along with her world and her joys and sorrows. But something was there that gave it continuity such that when Meenal popped back up again, she said, I slept well. I knew nothing, but there was bliss. What is the source of that bliss? That means, apart from this Meenal, there is a continuity to my identity, which is what is there through the thread of time, through the states of waking, through the states of dream, through the states of deep sleep, which is the entire gamut of my time. Think about it. Do you know anything other than these three states in your day? So your entire measure of time is broken up into these three things. That means there is something continuous through all these. What is that? Timelessly it exists, because the whole measure of time is pervaded by this one thing alone. Time itself expresses in these three states for us. Other than these three states, we don't know anything else. So what is the nature of my absolute existence? I am changeless consciousness, which enlivens this mind, which expresses as the individual and then perceives the world as its object. That consciousness alone is my nature, and it is that consciousness that has unfolded as this entire universe and the knower of this universe. If I know that I am eternal, I am immortal, that I am timeless, then do I have death? Does anybody have death? that ultimate consciousness, is it different in you and me? It is the substratum of everything. That is our absolute identity. This Bhagavan reveals in the first half of chapter 2. So he then asks Arjuna, so for this Atma which can never die, Arjuna, can you grieve? That it doesn't die, there's no end to it, it is immortal. Why grieve for it? It doesn't change, it doesn't know joy, it doesn't know sorrow, it's the nature of bliss. Why grieve? Next one he asks, as a Jivatma, at a relatively eternal level, even if I consider myself to be embodied, Sanatana Dharma says that you go from one embodiment to the next based on your karmas and your vasanas that needs to be fulfilled. That is also eternally cyclical. So even as the Jiva, is there an end to you? The Bhagavatam says very clearly, there's no point in time when you're not embodied. So as the Jiva, the embodied consciousness, is there an end to you? No. If I don't know the truth of my absolute nature, then I'm continuously identified with a relative identity, that which is consciousness conditioned by embodiment. Even then I'm continuously being embodied one after the other. So why should I grieve? Is there an end to the Jiva? No. So Atma doesn't bear grief. Jiva doesn't bear grief. Body is by nature perishing anyway. Material. It will perish. So why grieve for that which is cannot be changed? In, what's the word for it? It's not coming to me. But something that cannot be stopped anyway. By nature it will happen. So Bhavataha, it's like that. So at all these three levels, there's no reason for you to grieve. And if you think about thoughts and circumstances in life, does it ever remain the same? You tell me, has any situation in life been a permanent thing for you? Hasn't it all changed? It has come, it has gone, both giving you joy and sorrow. So that joy you feel also has come and gone. That sorrow as you have felt also has come and gone. Has anything been permanent? Whatever you experience in the form of thought, the situation and the thought has not remained. So does it bear grief? Swami Swarupananji says this very beautifully. He says the solution to sorrow, or what you need to confront sorrow with, is recognizing that change is a constant. That nothing remains the same anymore. And he says when you are able to actually recognize and identify with this, he says sorrow cannot take a grip on you. Sorrow cannot overwhelm you. Because you've understood the nature of change. You've understood the nature of things. So everything comes and goes. Why should I permanently sit and cry? Somebody will come and cry. Gurudev tells this story in a very joking way. Gurudev, I miss my husband so much. Gurudev, so poor thing. Gurudev petting the head and thinking, husband must have just passed away. Your power, petting. Then Gurudev asked, when did your husband go? 20 years ago, Gurudev, my husband went. 20 years ago, your husband went. After the 20 years, what did you do? Is it avoidable? No. But why do you let go of your present over something in the past? So is grief a valid emotion? At the moment, will I feel it? Of course. But should I let it overwhelm me? No. Secondly, I have to recognize that grief also passes. Any emotion passes in your life. How angry you felt yesterday about your child, how your child spilled that whole pot full of sodhi on the floor. The next day, ayo darling, right? You don't remember sodhi with each other. No, you let it go, right? So in this way, all of it passes. If I recognize this, then I won't allow a single thought to overwhelm me. And finally, Bhagavan says, doing dharma alone brings you joy and prosperity. He says it very clearly. All these things are impermanent, Arjuna, but doing your dharma will lead you to the right place, beyond this realm of change and samsara. So that dharma is in your hand, Arjuna, and not doing it will bring you disrepute, which will lead to greater grief. So don't let that go. He says that dignity is better at all times, even over death. Please remember, I said dignity and not pride. There's a difference. Sometimes we confuse both and we hold on to pride, and pride is going to lead you to a fall only. Dignity is the right thing at all costs. Pride is I want to appear a certain way at all times, whatever the cost. Even if the cost is your misery and somebody else's misery. Pride is not worth it, but dignity is worth it. Dignity even at the cost of death. Says Arjuna, that is better, and choose your dignity. And dignity lies in dharma only. Because dignity is linked to respect. And respect is actually not something others give you. It's something you give yourself. When you respect yourself, others will naturally respect you. I will only respect myself when I live up to my convictions. If I don't live up to my convictions, I will not have my self-respect. And then I'll constantly be harping about why the world doesn't respect me. If I have self-respect, I'm very, very least concerned about how somebody else has interpreted me, because I'm very clear about where I stand. When somebody disrespects us or something, when it pinches, when we feel that that characteristic that we have is not something we also appreciate in ourselves, the person we get very angry. But actually, I myself am not happy that I have that tendency in me. What can you fix? Yourself. Whereas when you don't have a particular tendency and someone keeps saying, you're like that, you're like that, you're like that, you're like that, because you feel that I don't have that tendency, this person is not looking at me correctly. So it doesn't affect your self-respect, correct? So my measure of respect comes from me, right? So here dignity, which is linked to dharma, is at the cost of death also may I choose that and that alone. And finally, Guruji says, if you live your life well aligned to dharma, what is there to grieve? Then death also brings joy only. When you go someone, Gurudev always says, there's some people you cry whenever they go. And there's some people you cry whenever they're there. So which one do you want to be? Right? So in that sense, live in such a way that when you are gone, you will be remembered with the utmost amount of love and respect. And what ensures this? When I live dharma, anchored to absolute good. Gita gives us. Gita gives us what is absolute good. Gita gives us what is my relative duty also. Both is ultimately dharma only. My essential nature and how I have to relatively express. So this Bhagavan very clearly gives in chapter 2. And then he touches on Karma Yoga, which I'm not going to do because very beautifully third chapter will do justice to it. But there's some very key verses of Karma Yoga in chapter 2, but I don't have the time today, so I'll leave it for tomorrow's speaker, because chapter 3 is Akavera Anivera Karma Yoga Patra, so I don't need to worry about that. But we're going on to the next part, Sthita Prajna Lakshana, which talks about the man of wisdom and how he expresses it. A most beautiful portion, because why? The Jnani's Lakshanas are what we have to aspire to. For them, they have lived with the right values, they have embraced the vision, and they have now been established such that all this is a natural expression in them. We aspire to this so that we attain the right values, live up to the vision, know the same truth, and have this natural expression in us. That's why we study Sthita Prajna Lakshana. How does the man of wisdom express? So it sets that bar of example on how we should live. Now I can't go through most of it, but I'll go through two very important things. One of the most famous shlokas that comes in the Gita, not as part chapter 2, not as part of Sthita Prajna Lakshana, but earlier. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agamapayino nityaha tam stitikshasva bharata. Recognize, Arjuna, whatever comes in life comes and goes. The pairs of opposites that we experience. Titikshasva bharata. Look at it with forbearance, with the knowledge that what is my absolute nature that doesn't changing, it can never get affected. What comes and goes, let it come, let it go. This vision we must have when we confront anything in life. The second part is linked to Sthita Prajna Lakshana. When I first started studying Siddha Prajna Lakshana, it's one of the first things I studied. In fact, it was the first thing I heard from Puja Guruji. First lecture I heard from Puja Guruji was Siddha Prajna Lakshana. Study in detail, close the chapter, started chapter 3 already. And then I asked, what was the gist of Siddha Prajna Lakshana? And I found I couldn't answer it. And I told myself, what did you study? Siddha Prajna Lakshana, if you cannot give a gist, that means you've not studied it properly. So I told myself, go back to chapter 2. And then I realized something very amazing in Siddha Prajna Lakshana. The bulk of Siddha Prajna Lakshana was Indriya Sanyama Upanishad, the art of mastering your senses. Right? So then I realized, oh, so that is so key towards the expression of this knowledge and this joy and this perfection in us. So then, why should we master our senses? How should we master our senses? How do we approach this topic? I'll talk about it from 2 angles and I will close. So just bear with me. So, recently, since we go to the ashrams, and usually ashrams are in slightly colder places, I got into the habit of drinking tea in the morning. Tea in the morning, tea in the evening. Usually the beautiful thing about ashram routine, one of the things that you look forward to is that cup of tea. Most people do. It's one of the fun parts of being in the ashram in India. Tea. So I naturally picked up this tea habit. And it becomes one of the few indulgences you have. So came back home and maintained the same tea habit, 3-in-1 tea, going on and on. Anybody gastroenterologist here? Gastro specialist? Okay, good. So I can say whatever I want to say. But it's true. So I started drinking tea non-stop and gave me so much joy. When I first get up in the morning and then just nursing that cup of tea before I get into my study. And then at 3 o'clock sharp, the bell will ring again. Cup of tea. So my kettle is second floor room. So then recently, this last 1 month, terrible acidity. Kept getting up 1 o'clock at night, acid surging on the throat. Don't understand what is going on. And we are vegetarians at home. No garlic, no onion, sattvic food. We don't eat much outside except for the occasional nasi lemak fix that we all need as Malaysians. But otherwise, not much outside food. Not an overeater. So I was thinking, what is going on? Why am I having this? Is it because suddenly most of my job is speaking? Is that pushing the acidity up or what? Cracking my head. And then I realized, oh my god, it's the tea. Because I remember one day when my maid auntie saw my tea cups on my table, she came and said, Moi, idu pittam moi kudichikitte irukadha. She said this and she went off and I was thinking, pitta means it will create acidity in you. So I'm thinking, what is this auntie? It struck me. I was like, oh, possibly the tea is the problem. And I stopped the tea just day before yesterday. Instantly, no more 1 o'clock wake up call with acids surging. Slept through the night. Today also same thing. And then I realized, tea was the problem. I never realized what was the cause. Never linked it to the effect. Same thing with sense temptations. When we are indulging and we are enjoying it, அந்த நேரத்துல சுகமா இருக்கு, just like my cup of tea. But sometimes I don't know what the after effect of temptations are. And I don't even know how to make the link. If you are intelligent or you have someone smart next to you, like a gastroenterologist, they might tell you, are you drinking tea too regularly? Hopefully. But if you don't make the connection, you don't realize what is causing the burn. Same thing with sense temptations. What happens with sense temptations? I become dependent on it. My independence is gone. I think without this, எனக்கு சுகம் கிடையாது. But actually, before that object came into your life, you were at peace only. In fact, you lost your peace when your mind started agitating about the object. And then once you got the object, your mind reverted to its original state of peace. But what are you thinking? Object made me happy. You became dependent on the object. Without the object, you think you cannot live. The minute the object gets taken away, based on karma phala, whatever you come and whatever you get goes, or sometimes by nature things perish. When it's taken away from you, what happens to you? Liking something is not wrong. Being dependent on it is wrong. Gurudev always says you must be okay with or without something. And you have to be able to train yourself to be that way. So then you can assert your independence, which is your natural nature. Dependence is created? By you, by your own delusional mind. And then you suffer the ill effects, not even knowing that it was this that is causing all the impact. Just the way I never put together the link between the tea and my acid reflux. So because you see, when we talk about temptations, and then sometimes they sit and tell you, temptations never give you happiness. And inside all of us are thinking, but they're so fun. True or not? We have gone through that. I'm saying, but they are giving me happiness. What do I do? But longer term, what is the impact? The immediate video game gives you joy. But when you fail your exam, longer term grief is going to be created. That is the vision that I have to create. Sometimes this link is not known. And this link is what Shastra provides you. And it tells you the more you get involved with the objects and become dependent on it, you are forgetting that by nature you are happiness. And you've put your joy in the pocket of something else. Dhyayato vishayan pupsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho vijayate krodhat bhavati sammohaha sammohat smriti vibramaha smriti pramshat buddhi nashaha buddhi nashat pranashyati. From desire Arjuna is born anger. So no, he said dhyayato vishayan pupsaha first. And the object of the yoske arbichton when you're finished. Oh, it is so nice. It will make me so happy. Third stage, I want it. If it's obstructed, anger. The desire unfulfilled and obstructed is what becomes the energy of anger. It's a converted energy. From anger, you do all, because your vision is veiled by that agitation of anger. After that, it's from there, it's a train heading for a wreck only. Right? Krodhat bhavati sammoha, you've forgotten what is being taught to you, you've forgotten the balance in your life. See, where desire can drag you. Very simple story, Sita Mata. This Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha is very beautifully described by the story of Sita. Beautiful dear, make me happy. I want. No, you cannot have it. I think it's a Rakshasa. You desire me, and that's why you. No, it doesn't start with that. It said, no, I want this deer. Rama goes after it. Rama is injured. Lakshmana, you go. No, nothing will happen to my brother. Oh, you desire me. That's why you don't want to go and save your brother. Santa Vajna. Doesn't she know what is Lakshmana's character? Sita Devi. Huh? See, desire veils. And then Anartha. Misery. Now you can't wait to be reunited with Rama because that was your joy. Before that deer came, 13 years, although you were in the forest, were you not blissfully happy in the company of Bhagavan Rama? You had him all to yourself and nothing else you wanted. One silly deer. All gone. This is what objects do to us. One silly deer, that's what it is. And it took you away from Rama, your own inner bliss. So this temptation, and what is the effect? Arey, Lanka Vasa with Ravana, there were, we know, don't have. Right? So this I realize, I can intelligently check desires from overwhelming me. Please remember, liking or not liking something is not the problem. Being overwhelmed by it, where I feel that I cannot be without something, that is trouble. To be able to be with or without something is what is equanimity, right? So in this way, weaning the mind from that sense temptation is an absolutely important part of a sadhaka's growth. Again, I won't go into the details of that, there is no time. But you will hopefully study it in various parts of the Gita itself, right? Dealing with the mind and rising beyond temptation. So this, I'll close with a short story from Ramana Bhagavan. And I love his stories. So once Bhagavan said he received a postcard from some random person from somewhere, and the person said, I'm a poor elementary school teacher. My mother is old and my salary is so small. I cannot look after her properly. Please, Bhagavan, see to it that I get a raise. So Bhagavan said, why not? After some time, another card came. By your grace, my salary is increased. Now there is a vacancy in a higher grade. I shall earn more and make my mother very happy. Please, with your grace. So Bhagavan said, why not? Okay. And then next card comes. My mother is bedridden. There's nobody to take care of her. If I could get married, then my wife will look after her. But I'm a poor man. Who will give me his daughter? Where shall I get the money for all the expenses? Bhagavan, kindly arrange. Bhagavan, why not? Chiri poitu va. May it be so. After some time, by your kindness, I was married quite easily. My wife is with me. My mother wants a grandchild very much before she dies. Please provide. Why not? Okay, grandchild. After some months, my wife gave birth to a child, but she has no milk for it. I cannot afford milk for the baby. Please get me a promotion. Okay, why not? Got promotion, got increment, child is doing well, I owe everything to your kindness. Okay, Purinjida, Bhagavan just saying, okay, what have I done? Your punya karmas have rectified. Sometime later, card comes. Mother died. She worshipped you before her death. Bhagavan said, well, after a month, Swami, my child has died. Okay. After another month, wife is expecting again. Okay, God bless you. Some months later, wife and child both died during birth. Due to family trouble, I was very irregular at work. I was dismissed. I am completely destitute now. And Bhagavan just answered with a deep sigh. All that came has gone. Only his self remained with him. It is always like this. When all goes, only the self remains. My eternal self is never affected by what comes and what goes. That is my absolute identity. In that lies my absolute happiness, because that is of the nature of bliss itself. So, if I learn to recognize that the self is changeless amidst everything that changes, then maybe I will be more equanimous in how I face life. Maybe I'll build life with Dharma, and hopefully one day I'll be established in myself, knowing that the self alone ever was, ever is, ever will be. And this is my nature. In this lies my absolute good. If the person knew this, he will realize the self was before all those desires. It was during there when all the desires were fulfilled. It was there when the desires were taken away from him. All that he desired was taken away from him. But the self was a witness to all of it and was actually not affected by any of it. So should we not know the self? And in order to know the self, I should live the way Gita prescribes, from Karma Yoga to Bhakti Yoga, and finally being established in Jnana through Jnana Yoga. So with that, I will close chapter 2, and I hope that you will take the rest of this chapters as it's meant to be. Margadarshak. So we will know absolute good, we will know Dharma, and finally we'll stop having to run after the happiness that we unconditionally want. So with a prayer to Guru and God that we be blessed with this, we'll close today's chapter 2 with Purnamada. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.